That's how you build up. So, and you have to remember is that we have all these games. We sold the games, the brain games have gone from 2002, where they sold 20 million, to this year they sold $80 million worth of them. And is that good? It's good for them, but it's not necessary. You don't need these games. In fact, not only that, but they focus on one little spot of your brain. When we understand that the brain in neurobics, when we're doing our neurobics, I'll get into this, when we do our brain games, we have to be stimulating all parts of our brain. Not only our eyesight, not only our hearing, which we use all the time, but our smell, our feeling, touching things, learning Braille, learning music. And also there's 6 cognitive senses. I call them email. All right? And that is executive functioning, memory, intelligence, attention and concentration, and language. All right? So understanding, I've already went through the difference between capacity and agility, all right? About the kid taking my job, etc., and knowing the difference between the two, because this is what exercise does. All right, building brain by building muscle, okay? In case you didn't know, this was me, Dr. Fortnacy, before he dyed his hair black. I never looked like that. Thank God, Anyway, building brain by building muscle. All right? Exercise is essential for decreasing stress and aging hormone. It is one of the best ways of relaxing. And so when we're aging and our hormones are going, our youth hormones are going down there and our aging hormones are going up, one of the ways of bringing it way down is by exercising regularly on a daily basis. Second thing is that it increases brawn, lean muscle mass. It elevates, like when you exercise, it elevates your growth hormone, your testosterone, your estrogen, and your thyroid. Sleep, by the way, also does that. And it is true, if you don't sleep, you don't grow as tall as you could. And now we know it actually causes increased brain cells. It's called neurogenesis. We have done several studies to show that brain volume in the hippocampus, which is the area that is destroyed first by Alzheimer's disease, can be increased up to 20% by exercise and neurobics. There's an exercise regimen that we give at home and at the gym. And one of the reasons why I write this down, I created a home program, is because many older people, they can't get to the gym, or you're busy, and you can't get to the gym and you're studying. These exercises can be done while you're studying, and I always call it double duty. You could be studying, doing these isometric, slow exercises, a slow burn exercise at your desk, just like this, all right? Holding it there for 10 seconds, then pushing up towards you, then pushing it down. And you do, each one of these repetitions takes about 10 seconds, and you do 5 of them. If you do them the correct way, it will exhaust the muscle. It'll stimulate your mitochondria, which will produce what we call slow insulin trophic factor. Slow insulin trophic factor does 2 things. Number one, it increases the size of the cell. What it does, it gets to the brain and says, hey, we're overloaded. We need help. Bring in reinforcements. And it causes your muscle to hypertrophy or increase in size. The second thing it does, it goes to the brain and tells your brain that the body's under stress, and the body and the brain reacts by building new cells and building new connections. This has been proven in 4 separate experiments. So, when we used to call, and back in the old days, when I used to be a weightlifter, you believe it or not, I never let anyone know. No one in my school knew that I was going for the Olympics. I hid it because I was afraid that they think that anybody who lifted weights was stupid. There was a reason why we called the weights dumbbells. Did everybody think, under why? All right, they ring, number one, and the people who use them, that's how they got the name, dumbbell. Okay. The exercise gym program is really interesting because it considers your age and existing disabilities. Each one of these, the DEAR program is given at my office at Fort Nace and Associates. We have a whole gym program, so that it's not only a book. What we have is that you can actually come and we will put you on the program. The circuit program that we have is a weightlifting program that's also aerobic. So it's keeping your pulse in the proper range in order to have aerobic or heart stimulation and heart effects, good heart effects. And not only that, but it's stimulating your brain. And this is just what I was talking about, the mitochondria, the slow insulin trophic factor, going to the brain-derived trophic factor, producing new dendrites. And we know now, well, anyway, once again, just to show you the difference between the Fort formula and the regular exercise formula, routinely, if you use 100 pounds for weights, all right, and you're doing, I guess this thing isn't working anymore. I think I finally burned it out. Well, if you're using 100-pound weights and you do 15 repetitions, and each repetition takes 1 second, you're doing about 1,500 foot-pounds of of work. If the Ford formula, you use half the amount of weight so you don't injure your joints, you do 5 reps, but each rep takes 20 seconds. Only one set will give you 5,000 pounds of work. And so what you're doing in one set would take over 3 sets doing it your routine way. And not only that, but you have a chance of hurting yourself. In fact, in the 1964 Olympics, it was the first time we didn't take most of the gold medals. And you know why? It's because the Eastern Bloc countries were using isometrics and super slow techniques that we didn't know about. And so that's what I based the exercise program on. In 8 minutes, you can be doing it at home and do a complete exercise that will stimulate the brain. Or we have the whole, in the book, you'll see the whole circuit program. The Ford exercise formula, we talked about, and this is accentuating the brain's reserves. We talked about the bridge building that occurs when you do things in multiple different fashions, and that's all you need is novelty. One of the ways to do neurobics is not buying one of these expensive games, but what you do is that you do something that you're doing all the time, but you do it in a novel way. So when we had accountants, knocking out numbers, and we did a functional MRI scan to see how their brain was lighting up. We found out that despite them doing all these numbers, their brain wasn't working at all because the bridges that had to do with numbers were well formed. However, as soon as we told them, stop using your right hand to do the numbers and do the left, or do them in a different order, their entire brain lit up. So it is important to do things novelly. Instead of eating with your right hand, eat with your left hand. Instead of taking the same way home, take a different way home. Instead of opening the book in the same way and going in the same fashion, reverse it. This will build a lot more brain tissue than getting one of those expensive games. And this is what I was talking about with this is a neuron, right, with its axons. And these little points here are where we store our memory. We don't store them as we believe. We used to think we stored them all in the cell body. We store most of them in the roots that come out. And the roots are easily grown at any age. And this is just an example of how doing aerobics and anaerobics at the same time. Rest and relaxation. This one I don't like because it reminds me of the time my son got a hamster, and he was watching him running around, and he looked at me and he says, Dad, this reminds me of you. Running like crazy and getting nowhere. Sleep, so important. Sleeplessness and sleep apnea. If your parents snore, they better get to see a doctor and they better get there fast. It will cause obesity, it will cause hypertension, it'll cause diabetes, and it will cause decreased oxygen saturation. And the most important thing it does is you never get into stage 3 and 4 sleep, which is essential for dopamine and serotonin function. And remember, the cure is your willpower, and that depends on your serotonin, your dopamine. You need 8 hours of sleep. Another way of doing it, of building serotonin, is socialization. Believe it or not, we're social animals, and we do thrive on contact. And it has been shown to increase both serotonin and dopamine levels. And it's one of the reasons why as people grow older, they get depressed. It's because they don't have that touch anymore. You realize that sometimes people, older people, they may have not touched an individual all week. Maybe they'll go to church and somebody will touch their hand. That's the first human contact they've had all week, or maybe all month. If you were to have an aunt or an uncle or a grandmother or a grandfather, hug them. You're helping them. And prayer and meditation, study after study after study proves that prayer and meditation, people who pray, people who meditate, have half to 1/4 the incidence of Alzheimer's disease. Why? Because they have discipline. Because it builds what? Serotonin and dopamine, and gives them the willpower to follow through. And we did a study with the Buddhist monks, and not only that, but we found out that there really is an optimistic center of the brain. And the optimistic center is on the inferior temporal lobes. And there's actually an optimistic center and a pessimistic center. It's on the opposite side, the pessimistic center. And the optimistic center turns off the pessimistic center. And the optimistic center, in order to be turned on, depends on dopamine and serotonin. And so this is one of the reasons why I postulate we have so many marriages that are failing after 30 and 40 years. Because older people are not getting the sleep that they usually did, and it becomes more difficult to sleep. Same thing that's happening in younger kids. And so one of the reasons why, remember I told you that back in the 1950s, 85 to 90% of the kids had positive outlook on life, and now 70% don't. Yet we have triple the lifestyle that we had before. It's just because of this. Their pessimistic center is being turned on all the time. They don't have any dopamine or serotonin left to turn on their optimistic center. Yep, this is your optimistic side, and this is your pessimistic. Well, I didn't know I had this. Anything like that. And that's an atrophied brain of Alzheimer's. Oops. This is what I was talking about, long-term marriages and the sentinel risk factors as being, I believe, a major cause. A lot of people think it's psychological and they never got along. Well, I mean, you're pessimistic all the time. You're not going to get along with anybody. And believe it or not, it may be as simple as getting a good night's sleep. Okay, stress mess in marriage. Increases cortisol level when you're under stress, decreases your libido, increases your irritability, decreases your tolerance, decreases your prayer and socialization, and increases depression, which is directly related to Alzheimer's disease. Misery, sleeplessness, plus stress causes discord, divorce, and depression. And I tell you, young guys, because, and women, mainly because, as you know, the rate of divorce is, reaching 60% overall. All right, and this is, I won't go into that too much, but, in the brain there really is a devil. The devil did make you do it. It's the pessimistic center, and an angel in the optimistic center. And I truly believe that Alzheimer's begins in childhood, and we have proof of it now. Because it is the things that you learn, the lifestyle that you learn when you're young, is actually the lifestyle that you will have later on when you're 50, 60, 70. You do not change. It has been proven that if you're overweight at 18, you have a 70% chance of being obese after 50 years of age. And I always like to end with this, the prayer of senility. God grant me the senility to forget the people I never liked, the good fortune to run into the ones I did. Please, Lord, give me the eyesight to tell the difference. Thank you all. If anybody wants, I will be happy to sign any books that you'd like. I want to let everybody know that everything that is made from this book, all royalties, go to the Fighting Alzheimer's Fund. None come to me. Okay. Any questions? Yes? Well, I think that if you do it on a temporary basis, it will help. Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, if you take sleeping pills, is that good for building up serotonin and dopamine? It's helpful if it's done on a temporary basis. It's just like taking pain pills. You know, it's good to take them when you're in pain. It actually helps the healing process. However, when it becomes a chronic problem, then what you really need to do is find out the underlying cause of that problem. And in the book, there's a whole section on sleep hygiene. And so it's very important. Actually, antidepressants also are very, very helpful in maintaining sleep and decreasing depression and stopping. There has not been any study to show that it actually stops Alzheimer's disease, but there's several studies that are going on, and I believe it will show that. Yes? Oh, the question is that people who watch television a lot and are on the telephone all night, does that cause losing memory? I think that if they could do a study on that, it would definitely show that, because TV does not build, is not neurobics. In order to have a neurobic, that is a brain exercise, what you have to be doing is receiving something and then expressing something. All right, so it has to have two parts to it, and that's one part here, the other part connecting. All right, TV is you're just receiving, you're never making a connection. And that is passive TV. I'm not talking about educational TV or TV that you do exercise with, etc. And of course, cell phones, etc. I really do believe that there's been more and more scientific proof that they may cause tumors, and I'm not positive of that, but there are indications. But I think the real danger of, especially with young people, is that they're talking to their friends in the middle of the night, and times when their cortisol level is supposed to be going low, they're exciting it, and they're bringing it up. It interferes with their growth hormone, their testosterone, estrogen, thyroid hormone, and not only that, but it decreases the dopamine and serotonin. And so they become less effective humans than they could. And if I would tell you that if I have a student that's failing, I always look into what their sleep patterns are. And invariably I find out they're not. So I think that parents, the first thing that they have to do is really make sure that the kids are getting the proper sleep. And guys, really, you really want to be everything you can be. Remember, your willpower really depends on your serotonin and dopamine. Well, thank you very much for all coming.
Good job.